Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for my client Doug's vlog, and we started the week off with a pen bench press, and he ended up getting 345 pounds, which we're pretty happy with, because our goal, I'd like to see him get a 365 bench at his next meet. May or may not happen, but 345 pen press, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to test his bench press out coming up here. I want to see where it's at next week, so we're going to do that. This week here for supplemental work, we did floor presses, and I'm going to cut some of his supplemental pressing out. He's getting a lot of wear and tear on his pec tendons right now, so we need to limit some of this. So for now, though, I have him doing floor presses and then dumbbell presses. And the reason for that is because, again, chest weakness. His pecs are his limiting factor on his bench. His delts, his triceps are strong. Again, he's always had strong delts. We do direct delt training. He can incline bench like 325, 330. So again, delts are not an issue. Triceps are pretty strong too, as you guys will see when he does his JM presses here. You can just look at structurally, his pecs are his weak link. JM presses, he can rep out a plate aside. Right? Triceps are good. So again, pectorals, and that's what we're focusing on because that's what we need for his benching. Right? They're a primary mover and they're weak link for him. For additional supplemental work though, we do lateral raises, right? I always let him do some lateral raises so I get some delt work in. And I used to not do a lot of delt work with Doug. We've started adding these in because, again, he just likes having the shoulder development. And it's always good to bring that up. But he's always had good delts, even when we didn't train them that often. Other than just a little overhead pressing, but mostly incline bench and rows. All right, then afterwards, I like him to do a little bit of band press downs. Even if we only do one set, the whole idea here is to keep the elbow tendons healthy with the JM presses. And on this, if you guys notice what he likes to do, he walks closer and closer to it so that, again, it gets easier. So it's almost like a drop set for him. Then, of course, pull-ups, which Doug is obviously good at pull-ups. These are wide grip, full range of motion pull-ups. And notice he can just crank out reps for days, dead hang, and just keeps going. Okay. Again, lats and back, not a weak point for him on his benching. Again, as demonstrated here. All right, for max effort lower, we did a deficit deadlift with 460. The thing is, 460 is all the weight he has. I feel like at this point, Doug's ready for a 500 deadlift, right? Even though deadlift has historically been our weakest lift, I think we're pretty much at that threshold now. All right, so for supplemental work, we do Romanian deadlift. I've had him doing a lot more RDLs than good mornings lately, mainly because hamstrings tend to be a limiting factor for him. His deadlift tends to be weaker than his squat. So I like to do exercises that focus on that a little more because the good morning is good for both, but again, it has better carryover to the squat, right? It's a much better squat exercise. And it's not to say that both exercises cannot contribute to both. It's just a mild bias there. But we also want to make sure I get that stretch reflex on his hamstrings. They have, again, historically been a weak link and even demonstrated there. Look at his Romanian deadlift strength relative to what he can do on a lot of other movements. Okay. He's only got 225 on there. So we know that that's kind of a weak link for him. And again, as I always say, weak links don't mean that the person is weak. It means that that's their weakest link in their kinetic chain. So, he's closing in on a 500 deadlift. By both standards, that's not weak, right? You ask the average lifter at the gym, 500 deadlift. Well, that is his weakest lift, and that's his weak link. The average guy who works out, that's an insanely high lift. So again, it's all relative. So what we're looking at is what is his weakest link? Well, his deadlift is his weakest link of his big three. His hamstrings are really limit his deadlift quite a bit. So again, we try to work them. For quad accessory, we don't need as much stuff. We do all these step ups. I like single leg exercises. I like the good mornings. Sorry, not the good mornings for him. The box squats I meant. All right, and then of course we finish off with reverse hyperextensions. All right, we do reverse hyperextensions here, but that's really not the finish, is it? I put a lot of emphasis on his hamstring, so we'll see up next is something I've had him recently add in to where we start doing high rep leg curls with bands. Okay, he doesn't have a leg curl device. He has no machine to perform them on, but we do have bands, and we can get a lot of benefits out of bands. We can get that over speed eccentric, right? We get that over speed eccentric. Again, we can get a really big pump on these. We can make the case that because of the band strength curve, we don't get the best lengthened position, but we already get a really good lengthened position from the RDL. So I think we can get away with that for a secondary exercise here, right? I think we can definitely get away with that, and we just get sheer workload. We get that stretch reflex, that myotatic reflex from the bands, okay? So it can bring a lot to the table, and I think particularly because it's so different from our other hamstring work. I mean, if we really want to look at what's going to bring up any given muscle, a lacking muscle, if we hit it from a couple very different angles with completely different strength curves, right? That is a very effective strategy to bring up a weak link or to bring up a muscle that's really lagging that we struggle to develop. Again, this works really well. All right. Then up next, of course, we have the dynamic effort upper day. Pretty straightforward for him. We don't have really band or chain setups for Doug, so we keep this pretty simple. Just straight weight, 9 triples, 3 of them wide, 3 of them medium, 3 of them close. All done for dynamic work. His supplemental work looks pretty similar. At the moment for this week, it's dumbbell presses. We're going to swap that out for floor presses entirely for this coming block, just again due to some inflammation we're dealing with and maybe not wanting to do two different presses. So we'll lose a little bit of that lengthened position on the pecs. But again, we've been overdoing it with that a little bit. And he's starting to get inflammation that we'll want to knock out. We do this. We do JM presses. We do our pull-ups, our lateral raises, our band work. Okay. Very, very simple. Again, we work with the equipment that he has, but it works. I mean, Doug's jacked. He's got a big upper body. So even with this stuff that we're doing, it works. We're mostly sticking to the basics unless we count the band work. But the basics work, even on conjugate. You work with the equipment that you have available. We're fortunate that he has the budget and space for a reverse hyper, even though it's a scout hyper. So at least we have that, which works for someone like him who has a history of hamstring and low back weakness. It's good stuff to have. Really good stuff to have. Of course, here we're doing our band press downs. Of course, Doggo's going to get involved. He'd come investigate. He wants some of the gains. Okay, but these definitely work. Look at the tricep pump he's getting there. Again, Doug's got a lot of tricep. That's absolutely not a weak link for him on his benching. Then, of course, we do finish up with dynamic effort lower, which is speed box squats, speed conventional deadlifts, and then the same supplemental work that we did on max effort day. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.